Here's the thing I wanted to talk about quickly before we get everything started. We had a few discussions last week about NetherRealm's current situation and how weirdly bizarre it is. For anyone that needs to be caught up, NetherRealm's next game has been largely rumored and leaked and talked about for upwards of 6 to 7 months now, where people have had discussions, if not insider information, if not rumors or anything like that. And we did have a chat of what it could possibly be. And since then, we pretty much got confirmation it's not one of the things, because it was rumored that there was a specific kind of platform fighter that might be in development. And that was originally said to be made by NRS. Lo and behold, it's not. It's a game that is actually independent of NetherRealm Game Studios. And while I don't want to talk about it too much, it's been out in the public a lot, reported from a variety of very big media outlets. Can't really stop it at this point, but that's going to be announced at some point in some way in the near future. It's just that that was rumored to be one of the NRS games, and we have confirmation that is not a NetherRealm Studios game. They are not making a WB-themed platform fighter in some way in the future. When that eventually shows up, you know, we'll see how good it is. We'll see how exciting it is, yada, yada, yada. However, what it does do is eliminate one thing. And when we were discussing this, to me, there's three really big things that have been rumored and talked about. The first rumor that showed up earlier this year, which is in fact that it's a Marvel game of some kind. The second rumor showed up not too many months ago. I think it's only a couple months ago, from some pretty reputable sources of people that get some good information and have been critically correct in their information resources, saying that it's Mortal Kombat 11. I'm sorry, Mortal Kombat 12, sequel to Mortal Kombat 11. Shocking. And then even recently, there's been even more rumors dropped about the game being Injustice 3. And in fact, I think the Injustice 3 rumors actually tie back to the fact that there was some GeForce stuff, some NVIDIA stuff that recently was put on the internet. Whether all of that is actually true or not sort of remains to be seen. Some stuff has definitely come true, but they also mentioned Injustice 3. Injustice 3 obviously makes the most sense, right? In a world where no crazy surprises happen, I do think Injustice 3, this is my sort of opinion on each one of these things and what it could be. I think Injustice 3 is the most expected thing in the world, right? If they just make it Injustice 3, and it's like Injustice 2, and they keep it going forward, and we're just going to take, you know, the existing roster from Injustice 2, we're going to expand upon that, and maybe add more characters, systems, and everything like that are going to remain slightly modified. I think for me personally, that might be one of the most bummer situations as far as getting a new NetherRealm Studios fighting game, of it just being another, like, Injustice with no big changes. I would definitely be very open, willing, and welcome if NetherRealm sort of retackled what Injustice is gameplay-wise and had a different approach to it. Because after Injustice 2 carried over so much from Injustice 1, even more so than almost any other NetherRealm game, the reused asset part is not really a problem. The problem was that the game felt even more limited in what you could do, and some of the newer systems didn't exactly make it more fun. It made it more frustrating in some ways. To me, I think Injustice 2 is actually one of the best packages in terms of games there is. I actually like its gear system way more than Mortal Kombat 11. I think its visuals are absolutely awesome, and I think its story mode was fantastic. I legit thought Injustice 2 was a really, really great full package fighting game in many regards, even more so than what the launch of MK11 was. It's just, there needs to be some adjustments. The stage can't be nearly as big as it is. There can't be such a huge emphasis on projectile zoning. It can't feel like it's a huge struggle, even at like an early level, to take characters that don't have those elements, those like projectile elements, and just have fun with them. It feels like it's constantly a struggle with many characters, which is why in Injustice 1, I like the characters that could skip that shit, you know? The Martian Manhunters and the Batgirls had to make you think about projectile zoning, because zoop, they could bop in on top of you if you were throwing projectiles, but if you would spam that stuff too much, you would get beat up because they were clearly punishable. Either way, I think Injustice 3, if that is what it is, I would be excited about it being different than Injustice 2 or Injustice 1. I think there's a good chance it could be that game. Tag Team Injustice? Well, Yes, you're answering a question that I think you can immediately fix a lot of the issues with Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11 by adding tag, right? I think that would actually, and there's examples of that working pretty damn well in the story mode of MK11, where you have a tag partner. It's actually pretty friggin' fun. But I like tag team games. I'm super biased in this regard. However, the other recent game that was rumored to be NRS's next game is Mortal Kombat 12. And to me, this is actually the weirdest one. If Mortal Kombat 12 was to pop up, the only reason that its existence makes sense to me is that WB looks at the sales of the Injustice series and they're like, hey, Injustice games sell so good. Hey, Mortal Kombat games sell better. Why are we spending so many years making Injustice games, and why don't we just skip straight to the Mortal Kombats? And that, to me, is a very logical path that NRS would want to take, considering how big Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat X were. Those games were huge multi-million sellers. I think respectively ended up being one of the best-selling games in the 2015-2016 timeframe, as well as, you know, the 2019 to 2020 for MK11. So that's where that one makes sense to me. That's where it's like, well, in any other situation, Mortal Kombat 11 doesn't make any sense because they do something different in between. But yeah, if push comes to shove and they're like, you know what, we want to make more money, let's do this. And then Mortal Kombat 12 is just Mortal Kombat 11 all over again with some new bells and whistles, and you don't have to choose your potential moves. Like, they keep the same abilities that characters had. They just modify them, if not add more. I don't know if I would be super excited in the same way about a Mortal Kombat 12 if it just carried on the same systems, like the wake-up systems and the meter systems that Mortal Kombat 11 had. I don't think that would make me super excited. Unfortunately, I would be kind of more excited about what the game could potentially be outside of that, them doing something different with it. Somebody said a tag game, and yeah, that immediately interests me. To me personally, I would be more interested in which characters are going to make it and how those characters are changing from previous games. But I don't know, man. Like, MK11 was on the market for so long, and to me, it was sort of a test of time. NRS games don't usually get that long in the competitive circuit slash the public perspective for that long. And Mortal Kombat 11 still technically is. Mortal Kombat 11 is still the premier NRS fighting game. So all the NRS players, if not all the people that casually play NRS games, are still playing it. And the more the game was sort of left out into the wind amongst people that were able to absorb it and play it for a hell of a long time, the more it seemed people got vicious towards the gameplay parts. When my animosity towards the gameplay was from, you know, day minus 90 before the game came out, I think a lot of people very much were warm to Mortal Kombat 11 at the start, and it grew on some people in the first few months, but ever since then, it seems that it's been a progressive decline of people being very aggressive about how they feel about the game. So I think that's just a result of an NRS game being around longer. NRS fans are used to games being in and out, like really fast, to the point where your game competitively is only around for about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year, before people are already watching trailers for the next game, getting excited about the next game. So while I think MK11 eventually did become a very good package of fighting game stuff, right? The single player modes and story modes, I like the MK11 story mode. I know a lot of people don't, but I really enjoyed the character interactions, and I really enjoyed the Aftermath stuff. I don't know. Once again, this is just like Injustice 2. I am more curious what they are planning to change, right? I am more curious if they are going to a different direction. They encourage like this engagement a bit better between its characters and allow for characters to do a bit more stuff instead of specifically limiting them. By all means, I think I would still be a bit more excited. Like, number 3 is Injustice 2 of what I'm most excited and hopeful for. Number 2 is definitely a Mortal Kombat, Injustice 3. And then number 2 is Mortal Kombat 11, going to Mortal Kombat 12. And obviously, the number 1 game that I'm easily the most anticipating is the one that was first rumored. So we got Injustice 3 rumors, we got Mortal Kombat 11 rumors as of late, but I think a lot of people forgot that this all started back in, I had to look up the video, April of this year. It has been almost 7 months. It's been 7 months. It's been a long time since we first discussed what the hell NRS's first next game is going to be. And my big hope is that it was going to be Marvel versus DC, like an actual NRS versus game. That's my hope. The more I've thought about it over this time, Because I think the rumor was just, it's a Marvel game, right? Like NetherRealm Studios would be making a Marvel superheroes / just a Marvel fighting game of some kind. And like I said, I think the one game you can compare that to, if it is what it is quite literally Capcom's Marvel Superheroes, which takes a combination of Avengers and weird comic book characters from Marvel, as well as X-Men, and sort of throws them into one game. Or it's not specifically like an Avengers fighting game or or an X-Men fighting game. It's Marvel Superheroes. That's what if it is a Marvel game, that's what I think it could be. I think it would be a dedicated Marvel game. The more that time has gone by since we haven't heard anything about this, right? That happened 7 months ago. Nobody's talked about it since. Only people that are talking about stuff are talking about crazy WB platformer game. They're talking about it now being Mortal Kombat 11. And even recently with some of the NVIDIA leaks that, oh, it's Injustice 3. They're not making 3 fighting games, right? They're not. It's going to be one of these games that's going to be revealed possibly very soon. If I say MK11, I meant MK12. The more time has gone by, the more I think it's probably not going to be Marvel versus DC. And here's the reason why. I think Marvel versus DC, if that eventually is a thing, even though I want that to be the thing, I want it to be like Wolverine versus Batman, like on the main cover. I think that's me having a bit too much foresight. You know, you have to Infinity War this bitch. You know what I mean? It's pretty clear that there is a path at some point that can take characters from the Injustice universe and put them against NRS's potential Marvel universe if that ends up being a thing. Would the first game possibly be a versus game featuring Marvel and DC characters? I think that's a bit too early. I think if anything, if it is the Marvel game, which I hope it is the most, I think the first Marvel game that they do would just be Marvel Superheroes standalone, right? If NRS is going to go that route, you have to remember back that, granted, Ed Boon and his Twitter trollery have always sort of built up to being either completely true, or you have to wait so many years in the future that people just forget about what he said. And there was definitely some interviews in the past year and a half. In fact, right after the release of Mortal Kombat 11, or right around Aftermath, I think it was, where he specifically talked about his desire to do a Marvel game, right? How hype he thinks a Marvel game would be. And considering the lengths that WB/NRS have gone out to get character licensing and character likeness of real life actors into their games, I don't know, man. This seems like it's paid off for them very well. I think their games have been selling, and the DLC for their games has been astronomically successful. I think it's very likely that this would be something that they would want to do. And I'm genuinely curious about it, right? I feel like if there's one thing that is, I mean, we can all agree, because we're just talking about rumors and hopefuls and everything like that of what the hell NRS could possibly be working on, or what they possibly are working on. And the 3 big likelihoods are a Marvel fighting game, a DC Injustice 3, or Mortal Kombat 12. And to me, the most exciting thing that it could possibly be is a NRS-focused Marvel Superheroes game. Just like I said back in the April video, when we were talking about this, I got the same emotional conflict where a lot of people already have a brutal understanding, if not familiarity, of what Marvel fighting game characters kind of are. If suddenly the NRS spin is put upon them and they play like Injustice characters, I don't know if that's going to be received super well. I think regardless, it's going to sell well, right? I think it's going to sell just fine because that game's going to look amazing. That game's going to obviously be one of the best looking visual fidelity fighting games of all time. It'll sell just fine. But I think what I want the most out of any of these games, whether or not it's a Marvel game or an Injustice game or a new Mortal Kombat, I really want NRS to flex a little bit. And I don't mean flex in every other regard to visuals and story and single player content. I feel like every facet of their games has been doing that absolutely fine, and it's been clearly making some sales. I want to see them flex in terms of what they can make these characters do, right? I want to see these guys make these characters do some amazingly fun stuff. I want the focus to be like, characters should feel powerful, right? The Marvel characters have always felt powerful in a lot of their iterations in fighting games in the past. And I think one of the bigger issues with Injustice 2 is that a lot of those characters don't really feel like they are superheroes in terms of what they're like capable of. You know what I mean? And I just want them, to stick that shit all the way, go all the way with what characters have and their power levels and how crazy bombastic they are. Because to be honest, that's sort of the way Capcom approached this stuff with Children of the Atom and Marvel superheroes back in the mid 90s. And it worked to astronomical results. So it's my hope that NRS gets some freedom to make this character as fun as possible and hopefully not be hyper focused on competitive esports, right? I think that's my biggest gripe nowadays. Just give us some open-ended stuff that we can do. And even if it was a similar amount to what Mortal Kombat X offered with some of its characters, just in terms of variety and gameplay variety, that's enough for me, dude. Even whether or not it's, like I said, the Marvel game, an Injustice game, or a Mortal Kombat game, I think I just want to see what NRS can do to sort of flex their chops in terms of what they can pull off gameplay-wise. Because to me personally, Flip Out as a combo breaker, the wager system in Injustice 2 and Injustice 1 even, much less the wake-up system / meter system where you get meter over time in Mortal Kombat 11, none of those mechanics really scream to me that they're super fun, unfortunately. And I really wanted to like them and gave them a big chance when they first came out, but they just never really grabbed me. But either way, I think that's going to be one of those 3 big games. I want it the most to be a Marvel game because I would love to see what the hell NRS's approach is to a Marvel game. I think if it's the second best, it's going to be Mortal Kombat 12, and then third best, the tried and true, it's another Injustice game, have fun, type of stuff. We'll see what happens. And let's pray to God it's a tag game, because that'll fix a lot of problems.